Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most disgraceful financial crimes in recent history. A so-called nonprofit created to safeguard the savings of disabled children and vulnerable adults was nothing more than a piggy bank for two greedy executives. Their names, Leo Joseph Gavone and John Leo Whitek. They're facing serious federal charges, accused of siphoning off more than $100 million from Special Needs Trust, money that was supposed to fund medical care, housing, and basic dignity for disabled Americans. This raises some hard questions. How did this even happen? And where were the regulators? And how many more scams like this are happening right now, right under the government's noses? Welcome to Nellie Miranda.
Also, big developments in a case Fox 13 has been following for more than a year now. Clearwater businessman Leo Gavone and his accountant are indicted by a federal grand jury for allegedly stealing more than $100 million from special needs and disabled people. Fox 13's Lloyd Sowers is live outside the federal courthouse there in Tampa, where Gavone appeared before a magistrate this afternoon. And Lloyd, he's accused of a whole list of federal crimes, right?
Yeah, Allie, and chief among them, federal mail fraud, wire fraud, and bank fraud charges. A 30-page indictment, unsealed today, accuses him of preying on disabled people.
Clearwater businessman Leo Gavone indicted on federal charges of stealing money from hundreds, maybe thousands of disabled people through his nonprofit Center for Special Needs Trust Administration. Prosecutors say over 15 years, Gavone stole $100 million.
$100 million fraud is extremely large, not only in the Middle District of Florida, but any place in the United States.
Gavone owned Big Storm Brewery in Clearwater and dozens of other businesses. Prosecutors say he and his accountant, John Whittick, laundered money. Prosecutors say they stole from the legal settlements or jury awards given to injured or disabled people after he gained their trust.
We were on first name basis. You know, he met my son. He came to our home. And now I'm thinking, wow, you lied the whole time. You were using the money.
Prosecutors say Gavone used the money he stole to buy a private jet and real estate for himself and others.
They're facing, in Gavone's place, 265 years in jail, Whitek 220 years in jail. That's their answer to them, that we are taking steps to hold them accountable for the damage that they've done to these innocent civilians.
Prosecutors say they'll go after Gavone's assets to try and compensate his victims. Big Storm Brewery filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy earlier this month.
Prosecutors were seeking home detention with electronic monitoring for Gavone. At $100 million, this is one of the largest fraud cases in this part of Florida in many years.
Let's break it down. Gavone founded the Center for Special Needs Trust Administration in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's a nonprofit, a charitable organization. On paper, it was meant to manage money for disabled clients, many of whom were children who were awarded settlements from injuries, accidents, or medical malpractice. Sounds noble, right? But instead, this was a Ponzi scheme wrapped in charity paper. For over 15 years, from 2009 to 2025, Gavone and his accountant turned partner, John Leo Whitek, systematically drained these trust accounts. They promised to invest the funds, promised to safeguard the future for families relying on this money for housing, medical care, and transportation. Instead, Gavone used the money for private jets, luxury vacations, real estate, and bogus business ventures. He funneled $100 million into his own company, Boston Financial Group, which acted as a money laundering machine, disguised as loans that were never paid. Whitek, his job was supposed to be an oversight, an accountant for the trust. But instead, he cooked the books, lied on the financial statements, and made sure victims believed their money was safe, even though their money was long gone. So how did this finally unravel? It wasn't an audit by regulators. Nope. It was a bankruptcy filing in April of 2024. The center finally collapsed under the weight of its own fraud. When the bankruptcy trustee started digging, it was like opening up Pandora's box. Over 2,100 trust accounts were affected. Roughly $200 million in total assets wiped out for many. Victims found themselves broke overnight, forced to rely on government welfare that these trusts were designed to prevent in the first place.
There is relief for some victims of an alleged $100 million fraud and money laundering scheme after the man at the center of it finally faced charges. Leo Gavone and his accountant were indicted yesterday following a federal investigation that lasted months. Today, we are hearing from some of those victims. Fox 13's Aaron Mesmer broke this story last year and has been following it closely ever since. He's in the newsroom. Aaron, what are you hearing from these families?
Haley, one of them told me they were so emotional when they heard about the arrest that they were brought to tears. Some of them began to wonder whether Leo Gavone would ever be held accountable, and they got their answer yesterday. A medical injury left Keenan Freeman disabled and in need of constant care. In 2004, his family received about $800,000 in a medical injury lawsuit with continuing payments set to last for decades. That was when they met Leo Gavone. Keenan's mother, Rebecca Bowman, will never forget what Gavone told her.
Entrust your money in me, and I will help. I will protect that and grow that so that you don't have to worry about it.
For 2 decades, she deposited money into the Center for Special Needs Trust, a nonprofit Gavone founded in St. Pete. Rebecca says Gavone shattered her trust.
The whole time he's stealing my son's money.
Keenan's account was one of more than 1,500 trust funds Gavone is accused of fully or partially draining. The center filed for bankruptcy last year, accusing Gavone of taking $100 million. Rebecca waited for Gavone to be held accountable.
We have wondered for so long why, people have done far less and gone to jail much more quickly.
Gavone's victims number in the hundreds, if not the thousands.
On Monday, U.S. Attorney Greg Kehoe announced a 15-count indictment charging Gavone and his accountant John Witek with a series of crimes, including bank and wire fraud and money laundering.
And let's talk about oversight. Where was it? This was a so-called nonprofit. Did state regulators ever check the books? Did the IRS, the FBI? They only got involved after victims started screaming for answers. The indictment is massive. 15 counts of federal fraud. Gavone faces 265 years in federal prison. Witek faces 220 years. They face charges for wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, bankruptcy fraud, conspiracy.
Not surprisingly, together, Gavone and Witek and the co-conspirators' actions eventually bankrupt the center. And when that happened, Gavone doubled down. To conceal his fraud further, he misled and lied to the bankruptcy trustee and bankruptcy judge in detailing the extent of his assets and has withheld business records from the court. In fact, this fraud scheme was nothing more than a sophisticated scheme to steal money and deceive and defraud the vulnerable victims while doing so.
It took a 15-year crime spree before anyone stepped in. How many people lost their homes? How many special needs children are now screwed because these guys were stealing their money and flying on private jets? This case isn't just about two crooks, but about a broken system. Where's the accountability for the regulators? Why does it take bankruptcy court to uncover this rather than the IRS, who had access to tax filings the whole time, or the Florida Department of Financial Services? In today's age, with all this technology that we have, this is ridiculous. So what happens now? Will victims see any of their money back? Will the DOJ claw back the private jets, the luxury homes, the shell companies, or will this end like so many government cases with fines, wrist slaps, and no real justice? And let me ask you, do you think these criminals should face life in prison? And do you trust our government agencies to prevent this from happening again? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if honest commentary brings you value, please make sure you like and subscribe, as it really helps support the channel. And tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.